The city of Manila is a place of loud noises, bright colors, and millions of stories. But for Rafael de la Cruz, the city was just something he looked at through the tinted windows of a car. Rafael was a billionaire. He was a man who owned ships that crossed the deepest oceans, buildings that touched the clouds, and companies that powered the lights in a million homes. People called him the Titan. When he walked into a room, everyone stopped talking. When he smiled, people felt relieved. When he frowned, people trembled. He lived in a house that looked like a palace. It had floors made of white marble that were so shiny you could see your reflection in them. It had gardens with fountains that danced to music and walls so high that the noise of the real world could never get inside. But inside that palace, it was very, very quiet. Rafael sat at a dining table that could seat 30 people. But tonight, he sat alone. He looked at the empty chair across from him. That was where his wife, Elena, used to sit. She was a woman with a laugh like a song and eyes that always looked for the good in people. 6 months ago, she had disappeared. She needed space, sir, his chief financial officer, Victor Salazar, had told him. Victor was Rafael's best friend. They had started their first business together 15 years ago. She said the pressure of being your wife was too much. She took the boys and went to stay with relatives. She asked us not to follow her. Rafael had believed him. Why wouldn't he? Victor was the godfather to his children. Victor was the man who kept the money safe. Rafael took a bite of his expensive dinner, but it tasted like nothing. He had all the money in the world, but his house felt like a beautiful golden cage. He didn't know that outside those high walls, his world was already beginning to burn. 6 months passed like a long gray dream. Rafael worked harder than ever. He thought if he made more money, the emptiness in his heart would go away. One Tuesday evening, a massive storm hit Manila. The rain fell so hard it sounded like drums on the roof of Rafael's armored SUV. The traffic in the district of Quiapo was a nightmare. Thousands of cars were stuck in the mud and water. Rafael leaned his head against the cool glass of the window. He was tired. He wanted to be home. Through the sheets of rain, he saw the flickering lights of the street vendors and the people huddled under plastic sheets to stay dry. "Traffic isn't moving, sir," his driver Manuel said. "There's a flood up ahead." Rafael sighed. He looked out at the sidewalk. Near a crumbling stone wall, a small group of people stood under the dripping eaves of a closed shop. One person caught his eye. It was a woman. She was wearing a jacket that was much too thin for the cold rain. She was holding a large piece of cardboard. Even from a distance, Rafael could see her stomach was round. She was pregnant. 2 small boys, maybe 5 and 7 years old, were huddled against her legs trying to hide from the wind. The woman held up her sign, "Please help. Children hungry." Rafael felt a pang of pity. He reached for his wallet to ask Manuel to give them some money. But then, the woman turned her head to wipe the rain from her eyes. Rafael's heart stopped. His lungs felt like they had turned to stone. The woman wasn't a stranger. She didn't have the diamonds or the silk dresses he remembered, and her face was thin and tired, but he knew those eyes. "Elena," he whispered. He looked at the 2 boys. They were wearing rags, their shoes held together by tape. They were his sons. His own flesh and blood were begging for bread in the rain while he sat in a leather seat worth more than a house. "Manuel, open the door," Rafael commanded. "Sir, it's not safe. This is a bad area." "Open the door!" Rafael roared. Rafael stepped out into the rain. The water soaked his expensive suit instantly, but he didn't feel the cold. He ran toward the stone wall. "Elena!" he cried out over the roar of the traffic. The woman turned. When she saw Rafael, she didn't run to him with open arms. She didn't cry for joy. Instead, her face filled with a terror so deep it made Rafael stumble. She stepped back, pulling the 2 boys behind her, as if she were protecting them from a monster. "No," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Go away. Please, just leave us alone." "Elena, it's me. It's Rafael." He reached out, but his sons, his brave little boys, looked at him with angry, tearful eyes. They didn't recognize the man who had been gone from their lives for half a year. "They told me you sent them," Elena sobbed, clutching her stomach. "They told me you wanted us gone. They said if I ever came near the house, you would have me arrested. They said you hated us." Rafael felt like he had been struck by lightning. Who? Who told you that?" "Victor," she said. "The guards. The doctors. They came in the middle of the night, Raphael. They told me I was sick. They took my phone. They took my ID. They put us in a car and dropped us in the city with nothing. I tried to call the office, but they blocked my number. I tried to come to the gate, but the guards pointed guns at us. Raphael felt a cold rage beginning to boil in his blood. He looked at his wife, shaking, pregnant, and starving, and realized that his best friend hadn't been protecting his interests. He had been erasing his family. "I didn't know," Raphael said, his voice breaking as he fell to his knees in the mud. "Elena, I swear to God, I thought you left me." Elena looked at him, really looked at him, and saw the truth in his broken heart. She let go of the sign and it fell into a puddle, the ink running into the gray water. She collapsed into his arms, and for the first time in 6 months, the Titan cried. Raphael didn't go back to his palace. He drove straight to a private hospital. He used his power to clear a whole floor. He called the best doctors in the country. He watched through a glass window as nurses gave his sons warm soup and clean blankets. He watched as a doctor checked on the baby growing inside Elena. They were safe now, but the damage was deep. His sons jumped at every loud noise. Elena wouldn't let go of his hand, even when she fell asleep. Raphael sat in a hard plastic chair in the hallway. He didn't want the comfort of his home. He wanted to feel the discomfort of the world he had ignored. As the sun began to rise over Manila, Raphael's assistant, a young woman named Sarah who had always been quiet and loyal, arrived at the hospital. She looked pale. "Sir," she whispered, "I found the records you asked for. I had to sneak into Victor's private server." She handed him a tablet. Raphael scrolled through the files. His hands began to shake. Victor Salazar hadn't just stolen a little bit of money. He had built a secret empire inside Raphael's empire. He was using Raphael's cargo ships to move illegal weapons and stolen goods across the border. He had stolen over $200 million. But the worst part was the Elena file. Victor had paid 3 different doctors to write fake reports saying Elena was unstable and dangerous to the children. He had used Raphael's own digital signature to authorize the security team to remove the threat from the household. Victor had turned Raphael's own home into a trap. While Raphael was busy looking at graphs and charts about being the most powerful man in the country, his best friend was treating his family like trash to be thrown away. "He was going to finish it, wasn't he?" Raphael asked Sarah. Sarah looked at the floor. "There was a message sent an hour before you found them, sir, to a group of men. It gave their location in Quiapo. It said, 'Clean up the mess tonight.'" If the traffic hadn't slowed down, if the rain hadn't been so heavy, Elena and the children wouldn't have survived the night. Raphael spent the next few days acting like nothing was wrong. He told the office he was taking a personal retreat. He stayed at the hospital, but he was working. He hired a new team of investigators, people Victor didn't know. He discovered that Victor was like a spider in the center of a giant web. He had bribed the police, the lawyers, and even some of the politicians Raphael called friends. Everyone was on Victor's payroll. "If I go to the police now, he'll know," Raphael told Sarah. "He'll vanish before they can get him. I have to bring him to me." Raphael felt a deep, dark shadow over his soul. He had spent his life building things, but he realized that he had built them on sand. He had trusted the wrong people because they made him feel important. He had let his ego grow so big that it blocked his view of the people he loved most. He visited Elena in her room. She was sitting up, her color returning. She was braiding the hair of their youngest son. "I have to go to the estate," Raphael said. Elena grabbed his arm. "Don't! He's dangerous, Raphael. He's not the man you think he is." "I know," Raphael said, kissing her forehead, "but I'm not the man he thinks I am either. He thinks I'm a king who doesn't know how to fight. He's about to find out that a father is much more dangerous than a billionaire." Raphael left the hospital. He didn't take the armored SUV. He took a plain, beat-up car. He wanted to see the world as Elena had seen it. He saw the struggle, the dirt, and the hunger. He realized that his billions had made him blind. He was going home to clear the scales from his eyes. The De La Cruz estate was glowing with golden lights when Raphael arrived. It looked like a dream, but to Raphael, it felt like a graveyard. He walked into the grand library. The walls were lined with thousands of books Raphael had never read. He poured 2 glasses of expensive juice. He wanted his mind sharp. He pressed a button on his desk. "Tell Mr. Salazar I'd like to see him for a late-night toast. Tell him we just closed the energy deal in Singapore." 10 minutes later, Victor Salazar walked in. He was wearing a silk robe, looking relaxed and smug. He was smiling the same smile he had used for 15 years. "Rafael, you're back early from your retreat. How was the peace and quiet?" Victor asked, taking a seat in a leather chair. "It was eye-opening, Victor," Rafael said, his voice as smooth as glass. "I saw things I never expected to see." "Oh? Like what? New investments? A new island?" "I saw a woman," Rafael said. He watched Victor's face closely. Victor didn't blink. "There are many women in the world, my friend. Which one caught your eye?" "A woman in the rain," Rafael continued. "In Quiapo. She was holding a sign. She was pregnant. She had 2 boys with her. They looked remarkably like my sons." The smile on Victor's face didn't disappear, but it changed. It became cold, hard. The mask was slipping. "Rafael, you've been working too hard. You're seeing ghosts," Victor said. He reached into his robe. Rafael knew he was reaching for a phone to call the guards. The guards Victor had bribed. "The guards aren't coming, Victor," Rafael said. "I changed the security codes an hour ago, and the men you sent to clean up in Quiapo? They're currently talking to the federal agents I hired from outside the city." Victor's hand stopped. The silence in the library became heavy. Victor didn't look scared. He looked bored. He leaned back and crossed his legs. "So you found them. Well done, Rafael. I honestly didn't think you'd ever look out the window of that fancy car of yours. You were always too busy admiring your own reflection." "Why?" Rafael asked. It was the only word he could manage. His heart felt like it was being squeezed by a giant hand. "I gave you everything. You were my brother." "Brother?" Victor laughed, and the sound was like glass breaking. "You were the master and I was the servant. I did all the work. I handled the dirty deals. I made sure your name stayed clean while mine got stained. And what did I get? A nice salary and the chance to watch you play King of the Hill?" Victor stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the vast gardens. "I didn't just want your money, Rafael. I wanted to see you lose. I wanted to see the great Rafael de la Cruz realize that he couldn't even keep track of his own wife. It was so easy. You were so desperate to believe she left you because your ego couldn't handle the idea that you weren't enough for her." Victor turned around, his eyes burning with hate. "I watched them starve. I watched your sons cry for you. I told them you didn't want them. And you know what the best part was? You let me do it. You trusted me more than your own heart." Rafael stood up. He wanted to hit him. He wanted to vent all his rage, but he stayed still. He looked at the hidden camera in the bookshelf. He knew every word Victor said was being recorded and sent directly to the National Bureau of Investigation. "You're right, Victor," Rafael said quietly. "I was a fool. I was a man who had everything and saw nothing. But that ends tonight." Suddenly, the night sky was filled with the sound of helicopters. Bright searchlights cut through the library windows, turning the room into a chaotic mess of light and shadow. Victor panicked. He ran for the door, but it was locked from the outside. "Rafael, let me out. We can settle this. I have the money. I can give it back." "The money's gone, Victor," Rafael said. "I've already signed the documents to hand over the shell companies to the authorities. Everything is being seized." The library doors were kicked open. Federal agents in black vests swarmed the room, their red laser sights dancing on Victor's chest. "Victor Salazar, you are under arrest for kidnapping, fraud, human trafficking, and conspiracy to commit murder," the lead agent shouted. As they tackled Victor to the ground and clicked the metal handcuffs onto his wrists, Victor screamed at Rafael. "You'll be nothing. Without your company, you're just a man in the rain. You'll lose it all." "I already lost it all 6 months ago," Rafael said, watching them lead Victor away. "I'm just now starting to find the pieces." Rafael stood in the empty library. He looked at the white marble floors and the gold leaf ceilings. They didn't look beautiful anymore. They looked like a crime scene. He took off his expensive watch and set it on the desk. He didn't want to know what time it was. He just wanted to go to the hospital. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of fire. The news of the billionaire's betrayal was on every TV screen and every newspaper. The public was shocked. They saw the photos of Elena in the rain and the videos of Victor's confession. But the media wasn't kind to Raphael. How could he not know, the headlines asked. A man who runs the world should know what's happening in his own hallway. Raphael didn't fight back. He didn't hire a PR team to make him look good. He went to the courts and told the truth. I was arrogant, he told the judges. I was greedy for power. My company was used for evil things because I was too busy to look at the details. I accept full responsibility. To pay back the money Victor had stolen and to provide restitution for the victims of the arms trafficking, Raphael had to sell everything. He sold the shipping lines, he sold the real estate, he sold the energy company, finally he sold the estate. He watched as the movers took the white marble statues and the expensive paintings away. He watched as the gates he had lived behind were opened for the last time. His net worth dropped from billions to almost nothing. He went from being the most powerful man in Manila to a man who had to count his change at the grocery store. But as he walked out of the empty house for the last time, carrying only a small suitcase, he felt lighter than he had in years. He wasn't a titan anymore. He was just Raphael. Raphael moved his family into a small 3-bedroom apartment in a noisy part of the city. There were no fountains, no high walls, and no security guards. At first it was hard. The boys missed their toys. Elena was tired from the stress. Raphael didn't know how to do simple things, like pay a water bill or fix a leaky faucet. But they were together. In the evenings, they would sit on a small balcony and watch the sunset over the crowded roofs of Manila. Raphael would tell the boys stories, not stories about making money, but stories about his own father, who was a simple fisherman. "Is it okay that we're poor now, Dad?" his oldest son asked one night. Raphael pulled him close. "We aren't poor, son. We have a roof, we have food, and we have each other. For the first time in my life, I feel like I'm the richest man in the world." Elena gave birth to a beautiful baby girl. They named her Maria, after Raphael's mother. When Raphael held her for the first time, he didn't see a shipping heir. He saw a new beginning. He cried again, but this time the tears weren't for the past. They were for the future. He realized that money can buy a bed, but it can't buy sleep. It can buy a house, but it can't buy a home. He had traded his empire for a family, and he knew he had won the better deal. Years passed. The name Rafael de la Cruz was mostly forgotten by the world of big business. A new generation of billionaires had taken his place. In a humble part of the city, there was a community center that served hot meals to the hungry every day. It was funded by the last of Rafael's savings and the small salary he earned working as a manager for a local shipping warehouse. Every Saturday, Rafael volunteered at the soup kitchen. He wore a simple apron and a baseball cap. He served rice and fish to people who looked just like Elena had looked that night in Quiapo. He didn't just give them food. He listened to them. He learned their names. He heard about their struggles and their dreams. One day, a young man recognized him. "Wait, aren't you the guy, the one who owned the ships?" Raphael smiled and handed him a bowl of soup. "I'm the guy who serves the soup now. It's a much better job." Raphael saw that his life had been a circle. He had started with nothing, gained everything, and then realized that everything was actually nothing if you didn't have love. By losing his billions, he had gained his soul. His sons grew up to be strong, kind men. They didn't want to be billionaires. One became a doctor who worked in the poor provinces, and the other became a teacher. They remembered the lesson of the rain. They knew that the greatest crime was to look away from someone in need. Elena became a counselor for women who had been displaced or abused. She used her story to give them hope. She and Raphael would walk through the city parks, holding hands like teenagers. Victor Salazar remained in prison. He spent his days in a gray cell, still bitter, still angry, still counting the money he no longer had. He was the one who was truly poor. Raphael would sometimes pass the old Quiapo wall where he had found Elena. He would stop for a moment and say a prayer of thanks for the rain. He knew that some people thought his story was a tragedy. They saw a man who lost a fortune. But Raphael saw a man who was saved by a miracle. He had stepped out of his armored car and into his own life. The sun was setting on another busy Manila day. Raphael, now an old man with silver hair and a kind face, walked home from the community center. His daughter Maria was waiting for him at the door. She was a teenager now with her mother's song-like laugh. "How was your day, Dad?" she asked, taking his bag. It was perfect, Raphael said. He looked at his hands. They were calloused from work, not soft from sitting behind a desk. He looked at the small apartment, filled with the smell of cooking and the sound of his family talking. He realized that the greatest crime wasn't the stolen money or the forged documents. It was the moment a man with everything failed to see his own family disappear. But the greatest victory was the moment he found them again. Rafael de la Cruz sat down at the small table. It wasn't white marble, and it didn't seat 30 people. But every chair was filled, every heart was full. And as the rain began to patter gently on the roof, Rafael smiled. He was home.